Hello and welcome to SDPN's 2023-2024 NBA season previews. Today we're headed to Northern California to take a closer look at the Sacramento Kings. After a surprise season that helped the Kings snap their 16-year playoff drought, the future is bright for this younger, offensively dominant team. But now that their opponents know what to expect, can they live up to the hype and build off of it? Let's discuss. But first, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. The season is almost here, and we have tons of great NBA videos coming your way to get you prepped for what should be an awesome year. Last season was monumental for the Kings. They not only snapped the longest active playoff drought in North American sports, but they also established an identity for themselves, centered around their two stars, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Their high-octane offense, implemented by Coach of the Year Mike Brown, was one that was predicated off of off-ball movement, motion actions, and a version of 7 seconds or less basketball. Fox's bursty speed paved the way for this system, and for his part, Fox became a first-time All-Star, All-NBA member, and won Clutch Player of the Year. Sabonis, on the other hand, was the orchestrator for the #1 offense in the NBA, serving as a dribble handoff hub and playmaking hub from the high post on his way to his third All-Star nod and first All-NBA selection of his career. In Sabonis, who's 27, and Fox, who's 25, the Kings have a nucleus young enough to allow them to field a competitive roster for quite some time. It only helps that their front office did an excellent job of rounding out their core with young complementary pieces that fit in that system. In Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, and Keegan Murray, all guys who can score and space the floor for Fox and Sabonis to operate. The Kings valiantly pushed the defending champion Warriors to 7 games in round 1, and now their identity is established and their team is solidified. They have to hope to build on it. It's for that reason that Sacramento decided to double down on its current roster and not make any drastic changes in the summer. They re-signed Sabonis to a 5-year, $217 million deal, a hefty penny for a top 30-ish player, but with player salaries going up and Sabonis still 27, it's likely that only the back end of that contract will be a tough pill to swallow. They absolutely had to extend Sabonis, and it was the right call regardless. They also re-signed the bulk of their playoff rotation, inking Harrison Barnes, Trey Lyles, and Alex Len to extensions, while extending qualifying offers to some of their younger prospects in Neemias Queta and Keon Ellis. And while the Kings are running it back, they did make some minor additions to their roster as well that are noteworthy. They traded for Pacers guard Chris Duarte, who had an impressive rookie season before falling out of Indiana's rotation in year 2. Duarte is on the older side for a player only 3 years into his career at 26 years old, but he already has a connection with Sabonis from his Pacers days, and I think he'll be successful in Sacramento because of it. Duarte can space the floor and knock down shots, and despite struggling last season, in the Kings offense, there's a scenario where he thrives. The Kings also signed Nerlens Noel to give them another rim-protecting big man they can throw into lineups, which makes sense given their struggles on that end, especially in the playoffs. And maybe most notably, they inked the 2023 EuroLeague MVP Sasha Vezenkov to a 3-year contract. Vezenkov is a 28-year-old lefty sharpshooter from Bulgaria who's been playing professional basketball since 2011. It's unsure how much of his European dominance will translate to the NBA, but at surface level, it's easy to see how he'd fit in Sacramento's system as a sharpshooting stretch big who can also provide some size and playmaking. His game reminds me a lot of Joe Ingles, and he has an insane release point for his shot, so I'm really intrigued to see how he'd look in Sacramento. But the player I may be most intrigued about on the Kings is Davion Mitchell, aka Off Night. Mitchell was crucial for the Kings in their first round series against the Warriors, particularly on the defensive end where he was a menace at the point of attack, making life difficult for Steph Curry. For a team that doesn't have a ton of defensive talent, having a player like Mitchell who can lock up the opposing team's best guard on any given night is a huge bonus. The question will always be how much he can provide offensively. Mitchell isn't a good shooter. He shot less than 32% from behind the arc in his 2 seasons in the league and hasn't shown much promise of developing that further. If he can somehow manage to get to 35% at some point in his career, it'll be a massive win for him as a player because it'll be harder to take him off the floor, especially with what he provides defensively. He did improve as a mid-range and short-range scorer, hitting on 52% and 55% of his shots in those areas respectively, and I think that compare well in a pick-and-roll game with him and Sabonis. Besides, Sacramento has so much offensive firepower that they can get away with playing a player like Mitchell, who still hasn't turned out to be a positive on that end. Either way, I think Mitchell can have a big year in Sacramento, especially defensively, and if he somehow starts hitting shots, he makes the Kings even more potent. That being said, I think the biggest factor heading into this season for the Kings is two things. First, staying healthy. The Kings benefited from being one of the healthiest teams in the league last season, and while none of their players are necessarily injury prone, and they have tons of depth to counteract that, it'll still be a big factor, especially when you consider that secondly, the West improved while the Kings, for the most part, have stayed the same. The Lakers, Suns, Grizzlies, Rockets, Spurs, Mavericks, and Thunder have all gotten better. The conference is tough to play in, and while you kept up with continuity, other teams just simply got better. It's a double-edged sword, but the fact that they didn't use their cap space to go big fish hunting might come back to haunt them this season if they see teams lapping them. Most major sportsbooks have the Kings over-under win total at 43.5 games, and I think I'd take a slight over on that just because of the continuity this team has. Their offense is potent for regular season basketball, and they're still going to find ways to simply just outscore teams as long as they can stay healthy. The main area of concern will be their defense, that finished 24th in the league in efficiency last season, and if they slip up even a little bit on that end, they could see their standing in the West fall off. Ultimately, and this is more of a long-term goal for Sacramento, but they need to go out and find players that can fit their system both offensively and defensively. While Monk and Herter and Mitchell all fit their system, they're all somewhat one-way players struggling to hold up both ends of the bargain, either offensively or defensively. The two areas they need to address is rim protection next to Sabonis and wing defense. And while Murray and Barnes are adept in the latter, finding a defensive stopper similar to a OG Anunoby who fits the current timeline could drastically change the outlook of this team. Either way, that's not a concern for today, or even this season, but one for tomorrow. And I think I can confidently say that the Kings are going to continue being a stable play-in/playoff team for the foreseeable future around Fox and Sabonis. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. As always, we appreciate your support. Take care.